Can I just ask you? I said who you are, but you maybe want to say a little bit more about yourself, to introduce yourselves each one, and then we will go back to Anna-Karina, who will tell us a bit about the European Cycling Declaration, how it came about, and what its implications are, and then we take the discussion from there. So, Anna-Karina, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anna-Karina, and I am Policy and Communications Officer at the European Cyclists Federation. And a lot of the work that I do at the ECF revolves around cargo bike data collection and project management. And I also coordinate the communications of the Velocity Conference.
Thank you. My name is Nout Ramaekers. I'm working as a program manager for the Dutch Cycling Embassy. This is a foundation where we try to help cities worldwide become more bicycle friendly.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Jeyda. I am the founder of Fettle. We are a network of bicycle repair and maintenance workshops. We've got 7 centres at the moment across the UK, mainly in London and Bristol. And we've also partnered with QuickFit, who are operational, of course, in both the Netherlands and in the UK. And we're rolling out bike repair across their network. We provide that bike repair for everyday cyclists, but also for businesses, fleets, manufacturers who are needing their bikes to remain safe on the roads.
Thank you, Georgia. If you can pass the mic back, Anna-Karina. Cargo bikes are mentioned in the declaration in passing in the preamble. And then there is, of course, also a paragraph on cyclo-logistics. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a bit more about how it came about, but also what the impact of the Cycling Declaration will be, according to ECF?
Yeah, absolutely. So we, the European Cyclists Federation, very enthusiastically welcomed this interinstitutional cycling declaration, which was adopted during the Urban Mobility Days in Seville just a few weeks ago. And this declaration is truly historic and equally ambitious, because it is the boldest initiative on cycling on such a high political level to date. And it just provides such an excellent framework for all of us to be going out there, making new policies and making more progress on cycling. And the cycling strategy sets out that it wants to be a strategic compass for existing and future policies. And when Adina Valian, the EU Commissioner for Transport, launched the declaration, she said that it is designed to get more people on saddles. And one of the main importances of this declaration is that it elevates cycling to a strategic policy priority of the European Commission and institutions. So not only does it place cycling on the same level as other modes of transport, but it also highlights cycling as a key solution to some of the most pressing challenges, and also to some of the EU's most ambitious targets and goals, such as climate neutrality by 2050, Vision Zero, curbing congestion, and also green economic developments. So the reason why this is also historic, because there's now official recognition that cycling needs to play a key role in achieving some of those targets. And yeah, so the ECF, we have actually been lobbying for this for a very long time. And we do see a lot of our very long-standing policy demands reflected in this declaration, such as creating more and better cycling infrastructure, or making cycling more inclusive and affordable, as well as equal to other modes of transport. And we were able to achieve that because we're the only civil society voice on the pan-European level. And we've just been reiterating for many years the message that some of those targets that the EU wants to achieve are just not possible without significantly more cycling. And what we've also been doing for the past year is just been putting forward policy recommendations to key decision makers. We've been calling for a unified cycling strategy and declaration for many years. And we also co-chaired an EU expert group on urban mobility that also, in the framework of that, stakeholder consultations took place on the cycling strategy.
Thank you, Anna-Karina. Nout, you are in the business of, let's say, exporting Dutch cycling know-how to Europe and the wider world. What impact will this declaration, the role that the European Commission is assigning to cycling in Europe, what impact will it have for your mission, your business?
Yes. Well, first of all, congratulations on the work. Well done. I think it's very important to have this on the agenda of the EU as a pressing subject, which it is. And what we've seen in the last few years, if I just focus on Europe, is that there have been cities that used also COVID as a momentum for investing in the cycling infrastructure that they had on the agenda, but was a little bit further away. So things that were planned for the next 10 years in certain cities, they planned it for the next 2 years, because all of a sudden the roads became quite empty and there was a lot of space and momentum to redefine and reallocate the space towards more cyclist-friendly use. And I think this is a great example, but these are still some cities in Europe, and it's not Europe-wide where it's really a politics issue where we have a long-term commitment towards building cycling-friendly cities. So I think this is a great step towards a livable Europe.
Thank you, Nout. George, let's just take this beyond the EU. Because for the time being, the UK is outside the EU, and Ukraine and Switzerland are perhaps closer to the EU right now than Britain is. But still, we are the European, not the EU, Cyclist Federation. So we are actually aiming for this kind of policy to have an impact which goes beyond just the EU. Do you think, is this resounding in the UK? Will it have impact in the UK as well?
I think all of the sort of aims of the declaration are very universal, so they definitely resonate with people in the UK as well as in Europe. What I would say is I don't think the message has reached as many people in UK as I would have liked. You know, when I've talked about the fact that I'm coming and talking about this, generally the response has been that they haven't yet heard of it. When you look at the declaration, I think everybody can get on board with everything that's within it. So it is a question of how you get that message out there to people. I'm also quite interested in how the declaration has landed outside of those already invested in and interested in cycling. You know, in the UK, certainly it's about 95% of people don't cycle regularly, and if they're the people that we really need to make sure that they're seeing this and thinking of it as an equal mode of transport to others.
But there's also a risk there that if cycling gets the approval stamp from the EU, that might be a negative in the UK.
I hope that we're not that stubborn. I hope not.
So, going back to, we are at the Cargo Bike Festival. We will talk about cycle logistics. How do we I mean, we have an ambition to switch to more particularly urban logistics by all those kinds of bikes we see behind me. What do we need in terms of legislation, regulation, to make this happen? And you can choose who wants to go first.
I mean, I could speak on sort of from what I see in the UK. The legislation that I think we need is all around what types of vehicles are allowed on different types of roads, and that needs to be very, very clear to all road users. So that's point number one. There needs to be cargo rider training, I think, is very important, and making sure that the people using these vehicles are doing so safely and not putting other road users in any kind of danger. And then there needs to be, I don't know whether this needs to be legislative, but you need to have the right kind of service infrastructure to support the growth in these vehicles. So you need to make sure that there are proper professionals working on these vehicles, again, to make sure that those vehicles are safe.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think what we are seeing in the Netherlands now, starting to develop, is that we are allocating more space towards different electric vehicles, such as the cargo bike. I think that is something that will improve and will have to develop in the future as more and more people are using it, not just for carrying their children, but also carrying loads of cargo to shops. And if we look at cities, then the further we get from cities, maybe heavier traffic can be used. But once we go inside of the city center, I think the development will be and should be that we are using a lighter and lighter modes of transport, such as the cargo bike, which will be, I envision a city where there's 4 mobility hubs at the border of it, where trucks could go and park, and then from that point onwards, we use the cargo bikes as a mode of transport to get it into the city, because that is a place where people are living and children are playing, and we need to make it as safe and fun as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I do agree that infrastructure is key here. We need bike lanes that are wide enough to accommodate commercial cargo bikes, and also for you to overtake those cargo bikes. We need loading and unloading zones for cargo bikes, micro hubs, parking spaces. So there's still a lot of things that need to happen infrastructure-wise.
Let's dig a bit deeper into this and away from infrastructure, but maybe regulation, legislation. When you go around here, you see lots of things and you're not quite sure whether it's a bike, whether it would qualify as a bike, etc. And technology goes so fast that legislation will not be able to keep up. Because when you change the law, that takes like 3 years or 5 years. And by that time, technology will have moved on to the next stage. So how do we square that circle?
That's it's a very good question, Henk. I think the issue is, as you mentioned, that legislation will always be a bit behind. I think it's good to measure and to look at the developments that are being made and try to act accordingly as fast as possible. But yes, the truth and the practice is that we are lagging a bit behind in that. I just hope that for the future, that when we look at these bikes or the things that will be produced and will be invented in the future, that it will still be pedal powered, because I think health wise it's a very important aspect of being in movement. So while transporting yourself and cargo, you also do a bit on your health. But yeah, it is an issue, and I think that that we should keep in scope of the developments and act accordingly as fast as possible when they arrive.
I think that people get a little bit caught up on what is this vehicle. You know, we've got this real need that we want to categorize everything and be like, okay, you're in that bucket, you're in that bucket. But actually, if you set some general principles, i.e. if it's got a battery in it, then it needs to have passed certain product safety requirements. In the UK, we've got rules around the speed that it can go to, the wattage that you're allowed. So if you set some general principles, then if it's in the sort of grey lines in between the different types of vehicles, does that really matter? As long as it's applying to the general safety principles. That's how I would approach it.
It's amazing. We all see cars getting bigger, heavier, and wider. And when it's about bikes, it's an issue, right? Anna-Karina, back to you. Are there any best practices regarding local or national policies for cargo bikes and cyclologistics that you would like to highlight? What are the best practices, the examples to follow?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's a lot of things national and local governments can do. I think providing incentives is extremely important, especially because the price can still be a barrier for purchase of cargo bikes. So specifically for commercial use, I do think it's important to provide incentives. And there's a lot of, especially in Germany, there's also one on a national level, or there was one on up until now. And also just providing visibility. And there are cities out there, for example, that make cargo bikes available for loan for a business for up to a month for free. And that's an excellent initiative because then they just get to integrate it into your fleet for a full month, see if it's a solution for them or not, and they can test it in a very practical way. And I think tryout and incentives are one of the best practices out there.
You any best practices to share?
I just what she already said. I think that's quite important. You know, as humans, we are creatures of habit. So if you look at small and medium-sized enterprises, if you're using your van to go to work for the last 20 years, then it's going to be quite difficult to change the perspective and the habit that people have. So I think economic incentivizing the use of cargo bikes is one. You can also think, of course, of de-incentivizing the use of cars when that's possible and appropriate. But it's really about the awareness of, okay, this is not the only way of transport. There's also other ways which can be healthier, economically more viable, and of course, maybe most importantly, more fun.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think similar to what you're both saying, the testing side of things, very important. I actually think one of the most important things you can do to help with the growth of cargo bikes is make sure that there's a full life cycle to anybody cycling. There's the awareness stage, learning about how the vehicle works. There's the testing stage without committing to it. There's possibly leasing before purchasing. Need to make that available. Then once actually purchased, there is the maintaining it. And if parties don't collaborate across that whole journey, then there's lots of different points at which people can drop out and then not come back on again. So it does take collaboration across that full spectrum.
Thank you very much. Last question from my side, and then we will open to the room. Is there anything that you find that the market, that the industry is not providing, but that they should be providing? Is there something missing from the supply side?
I can certainly speak on the maintenance perspective. We are finding that a lot of the providers that we are doing the maintenance for, it can be quite a struggle to get hold of parts to be able to actually replace them, and also to get guidance and training on what is needed to be done on the vehicles. You know, we are going through a development stage and these vehicles are changing quite regularly. So that does take quite a lot of iteration and learning, and we need to be collaborating better to be able to make sure that we're keeping them on the roads once they're there. So that would be my request.
Thank you.
I think my two requests would be to really keep it pedal powered. So that's the first one. And secondly, I think awareness is very important. As you see, once people start using cargo bikes, then they usually are sold and they keep using it. But it's the step towards switching that is, I think, the most difficult, but also the most important. And I think that awareness is a key role that we need to invest in.
That awareness is not really something the market can provide, but they will do their best, I hope. Yeah.
I mean, I completely agree with what's being said. Maintenance has been an issue we've discussed a lot at these kind of conferences over the past years. And yeah, as you said, awareness raising, which is probably not, as you say, market related, but that's just such a key element to it.
Thank you. We're open to questions from the floor. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Henry, starting a cargo bike retail in Finland. Anna-Karina, I was wondering about the test periods you mentioned, up to a month of using the bike. Do you have some kind of data on what percentage of the companies then actually implement the cargo bikes into their daily life and actually lease or purchase them after that 1 month or the trial period, what it may be?
That's a really good question. I know that there was a scheme in Lisbon, and I think it was about 20% that then went on to buying a cargo bike, but immediately after the testing scheme. But I think, as I mentioned, like behavior change takes time, so you can provide it for a month. But how many then bought a cargo bike maybe in the long term? I don't really know, but I think there's at least like 20% who then, after these kind of schemes, go on to buy a cargo bike.
I know about a scheme in Helsingborg, Sweden, which regular bikes, not cargo bikes, for commuters, they put out 300 to volunteers to try, and I think they were 75% uptake rate, very high. More questions? In the back? No questions in the back? Well, then I think people... there.
Yeah, more about regulations, because I was longer. It took me longer to investigate the regulation than how do you call it? Save up for my cargo bike trailer. So today I heard two different ways if it's even allowed on the road. So what can be done over that? What is the current regulation? Yeah, and where can I find it?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think it links to what we discussed a bit before, where technology is way ahead of the legislation, and it can also be in a negative way influencing people when they don't know if the type of vehicle that they are in favor of buying or are using already, if that is illegal or will it be described as illegal. So I think also what has been said before is that if we can turn certain types of bikes and e-bikes and certain speeds into this cluster of vehicles, which then has a certain type of regulation, I think this will provide a lot of clarity for its end users and will help in evolving and developing the use of these cargo bikes.
I think that earlier on, Jeyda, you pointed to the way forward that regulation should perhaps be a little less specific, because it will never be able to cover all different variables. So is that something that legislators are looking at, Anna-Karina?
I know there's work being done on a European level on standardization of cargo bikes and legislation, and there's also expert groups led by Cycling Industries Europe that involve stakeholders and companies from all over Europe that are currently working that, but I unfortunately don't know the specifics.
Thank you. Yeah, there's always a question in the back. I can always count on you.
Hello, Liz from Oxford. Fascinating panel discussion. Thank you so much indeed. Okay, so I live in this horrendously backwards country called England, and we have this terrible problem with road design. We haven't made it into the late 20th century yet, in that when new roads are designed in our country, they are not in fact designed with universal access in mind, and they still are desperately car-centric. So building obviously from the Dutch experience, where when old roads are redeveloped and new roads are built, they're all designed to very, very high standards. What can I say when I write to legislators in Westminster? What can I say to persuade them that universal access road design is actually the right economic move to make?
I would say come to the Netherlands, or at least reach out to the Dutch Cycling Embassy. I think, yeah, we've been trying and we've been failing for a long time in the Netherlands to create this cycling infrastructure that we have, and we have done so by failing a lot. But in the end, when you do something and it turns out to be not working the way you want, then you improve, and then finally you get something that works for everybody. So I think that what we try to do as a foundation is that we want to prevent other cities from reinventing the wheels and really look at the best practices that there are already. And yeah, I would say maybe come to the Netherlands. We can have a study visit where they really experience how cycling can be, and then yeah, try to implement that in your city.
Thank you very much. And then I should seize the opportunity to make a pitch for the ECF network of cycling cities and regions. Get your city to join. It's cheap. It will give access to Velocity, and it gives you access to a network of cities where all exchange experiences and learn from each other through best practices, same challenges, etc. And there are a lot of informal networks like that. I saw a final question.
Thank you. My name is Maria Rosa Muñoz. I work at the Wuppertal Institute, which is a research institute in Germany. And I wanted to ask, maybe you mentioned this at the beginning, but I have been hearing around that there is like a lack in the regulation on where should these big cargo bikes go. So I wanted to ask you, what would be your take about it? Because, for example, in Madrid, I heard that they want these vehicles to circulate on a 30-kilometer lane that they made specifically for this. Would your take be rather that these vehicles, these large cargo bikes, go in the cycle lane? And under which infrastructure should infrastructure change in order to accommodate to these new types of vehicles? What is your take about it?
Definitely bike lanes should be wide enough to accommodate them. But that also means you need enough space for faster cyclists to overtake them. So you need a very well-designed cycle network that's also coherent to really cater for all speeds and types of cyclists.
Yeah, I think it is a challenge when you've got cities where the infrastructure or the space is really small. In an ideal world, yeah, you've got the infrastructure put in with the lanes wide enough that can accommodate that. I mean, I cycled here from the UK, and on the cycle lanes, I was a little bit surprised at first when there was scooters and mopeds and things overtaking me, because in the UK, they're not allowed in our cycle lanes. They have to go on the road. But I soon came to realise, actually, it doesn't matter. They've got plenty of space to overtake. It's fine. So in that perfect situation, stick them on the cycle lane. I think that's fine. In a situation where you've got really tight roads, I think there possibly is something to be said for maybe a separate cycle lane, because it, as somebody on my bike every day, is also really hard to get around a big cargo bike.
And actually, if we make the switch from distribution by motor vehicle to cargo bike cycle logistics, it means fewer vans on the road. It means we need to redistribute urban space, particularly in situations where there is not so much space. That's the consequence. The only thing is that the switch will happen much faster than the realignment of the infrastructure. Thank you very much to our panel. Give them a big hand. Thank you so much.
Thank you.